The Miami Hurricanes go into Kyle Field and beat Texas A&M 10-3 to advance to round 2 of the college football playoffs. That and the Hurricanes defense was the good news. This video is going to be on Canes QB Carson Beck with a little bit of Aggies QB Marcel Reed thrown in. But the main focus of this show today is going to be on two series that happened in the second half. The only two offensive series that were worth watching the entire game for the University of Miami. So in a brutal game for offensive fans, we have a lot more than just the quarterbacks to talk about. Some good, some bad, and some head scratchers. This is QB Unfiltered, my take. What a difference two offensive series makes.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up.
All right. Like I said in the opening, what a difference two offensive series makes. And really, when you boil it all down, it was one series to start the third quarter off, and then two plays on the Hurricanes' last drive, including a masterpiece called by offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson, where the Canes out-schemed and out-formationed the Aggies defense. And if you've listened to my channel before, you probably have a pretty good idea on what my take about this game is going to be. So I'll just go ahead and get it out of the way right now. Putting aside the fact that Miami's defense was screaming on the field for 4 quarters, flying around, making plays. Putting that aside, you could have caught some Z's and took a nap every time Miami took the ball offensively, except for that one series to start the second half off. And of course, that last drive where they scored the game-winning touchdown. And that's going to be the big focus in today's show. And I've got one question for you guys. How in the world can Miami zip the ball down the field on two offensive series and do absolutely squat for the rest of the game? And that is what's maddening to this Canes fan, and it has been all season long. So let's get into it. As always, like and share out this video. Guys, that really, really helps my channel out. And if you enjoy my take on QB play and everything that goes along with the passing game and offensive football, then please pass the word to your buddies and subscribe to the channel, QB Unfiltered. I really appreciate the support. Okay. 10-3 scores always indicate that there were some offensive issues going on for 4 quarters, and this game was no different. And as far as quarterbacks go, the issues were different for both quarterbacks, and I'll touch on those today. Among other things, we had some scheme issues, which hurt them. We had some pass protection issues. We had some offensive coordinator thought process issues, and we had a really tricky and difficult wind that both quarterbacks had to deal with all game long, and we'll talk about that stuff. First, the numbers in this game. Carson Beck was 14 for 20 for just 103 yards. He didn't throw any touchdowns, but probably most importantly for Canes fans, he didn't throw any picks either. Now, at halftime, Beck had thrown for 31 yards, which the announcers were saying was the fewest amount of passing yards by a quarterback in the history of college football playoffs. And then to start the third quarter off, Beck throws for about 48 or 50 yards on 3 completions, and they just zip the ball right down the field. And more on that in a bit. Marcel Reed was 25 out of 39 for 237 yards. He did not throw any touchdown passes either, and he threw 2 big and brutal picks, including the one at the very end of the game that sealed it for the Canes. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple of topics real quick, and then we'll jump into the game clips. Number 1, the wind. Okay, so for a quarterback throwing the football, the absolute worst weather conditions are rain combined with wind. The second worst condition is just wind. And when we're talking about wind, we're talking about a pretty steady gust. And what made Saturday's game at Kyle Field in Texas so brutal for the quarterbacks was the wind was not blowing end zone to end zone the length of the field. It was going sideways from side to side. And that makes it significantly harder to navigate that when you're throwing the ball, particularly when you're putting any type of air underneath throws with deeper balls down the field. Okay, so when you're playing in weather conditions like that with the wind, there are ways to combat that. You're not throwing the ball on outside verticals as much or post routes where you're putting a lot of air underneath the ball. So there are ways to combat it with the vertical game. And then you really have to rely on and lean on your quick game, which when it comes to Carson Beck, I have been pounding the table on that all year long. More quick game. Beck is better with the quick game, I think. He's comfortable with the quick game. It plays up to his strengths with the quick game. Now, we'll get into this in a little bit, but you got to go more short passes where the ball is out of the quarterback's hand. You can put some zip on the ball and the wind doesn't have as much effect on it. And then you just have to be careful with what type of intermediate throws you're making. But again, you want to be making throws where you can get on top of the ball, throw it with some zip on it and keep it flat and out of that jet stream. Okay, let's move to Carson Beck. You know, all season long, I've said that I didn't think Dawson has used him as well as he should have. There's a lot of games where I think he's been used as a game manager. And there may be some of you out there going, yeah, coach, you know, I think Beck put himself in that position by turning the ball over and maybe Dawson and Cristobal lost a little confidence in him. Well, that's sort of the point I want to make in this show today with Dawson not using him correctly is playing up to Beck's strengths. Okay. I think if you have Beck get the ball out of his hand quickly, you run more quick game, you run more routes where he's throwing in rhythm and tempo, more of the shorter intermediate routes to quick game. That's where he is in his wheelhouse and that's where he feels comfortable. Okay. The other thing with this that I've said all season long is I think that because there are times where he's used as a game manager. And guys, in this game, for pretty much 90% of the game, maybe even more, Carson Beck was a non-entity. And that's not what he's there for. That's not what they're paying him, whatever they're paying him, $4 million, something stupid like that. They didn't bring him in there to hand the ball off and not be a big factor as a quarterback. And I think because there are games where he sort of didn't feel like he was in the flow, the game management stuff, that mentally he drifted. I'm not saying he checked out mentally, but I think he lost focus. And I'm telling you, that first game of the season against Notre Dame, Carson Beck was locked in. You could just see it on his face. You could feel it. The aura coming off of him, the way he carried himself, his swagger, but more than anything was just that determination and confidence in what he was doing out there. A lot of the other games that I watched this year, he just wasn't the same guy. He was not the same guy. Now, the one time that Carson Beck stepped up and you knew he was on the field, and to me, it was such a big, huge difference. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in this video talking about this one particular series. It's the start of the third quarter when Dawson came out and they started doing the quick game stuff with a little bit of tempo mixed in there. And you could just see the energy and that light come on with all 11 dudes that were out there on the field offensively, and just a noticeable difference in Carson Beck. You know, after the long run in that series to start the third quarter, that long run by Fletcher, and Beck had 3 completions in there, and Texas A&M called a timeout just to catch their breath and get settled down and go, whoa. You know, Miami's lit a fire under their offense. You know, the cameras are following the players to the sideline, and there was a noticeable bounce in their step. And I'm looking at Carson Beck, as I always do. I'm checking these guys out just to see what they're doing body language wise and all that. Man, his shoulders were back, his head was up, and he had his mojo walking around there. And I'm thinking to myself, that's you, Shannon Dawson. That is you. The difference in the play calls, the throws that you had him make, and look how fast you zipped the ball down the field. Now we get back to running some frustrating plays when we get down into the red zone on that drive, and we'll talk about that also later. But what a big difference in just that one series for Beck and Miami's offense. Okay, before we get into the game clips, I've got a little mini rant here. My mini rant is about trick plays with the Miami Hurricanes. And, you know, what we saw Saturday in the A&M game with Malachi Toney was Shannon Dawson really going overboard with unnecessary scheme and unnecessary calls. Okay. Trick plays, if you're going to use them, just sprinkle one in every, I don't know, 4 or 5 games, whatever. But to come out and run the Wildcat with Toney in there, to have him throwing the football, whatever they did with him, the trick plays, it was just unnecessary. Okay. Now the commentators in this game, one was Greg McElroy, former quarterback for Alabama, who I think does a pretty decent job. They were talking about the trick plays, and just what they were saying just really, I disagree with so much. They were saying that, you know, some players went to Shannon Dawson and said, you know, we got to run some trick plays. We got to have some fun. And, you know, Dawson wanted to put a smile on his players' faces. And so they're doing these trick plays. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you know what's fun? You know what's fun for offensive players? When you execute your scheme so flawlessly that you scare the hell out of your defensive opponent. You intimidate them because you are flawless in your execution. What's fun for offensive players is when you go up and down the field and you ding the scoreboard up because you're scoring a shit ton of points. That is fun for offensive players. Now, with the trick plays, the Wildcat, the reverses, the whatever that they are doing with Toney, okay, that takes practice time. And so you're blocking out precious reps in practice to work on something you're going to call one time in the game, if that. Right? And you're taking away time from working on your pin pull run game to Fletcher. You're taking away time working on your spacing concept that Dawson ran last year. I'm not sure if he even has that in his playbook this year. Or you're taking reps away from Beck and his receivers getting their timing down, running your base pass offense. Or you're taking practice time away from running your screen game. Right? So the point I'm making here is way overboard on the trick plays. And what's fun for offensive guys, up and down the field, score a shitload of points and win a bunch of football games. That is fun. You know, defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman, what a great hire by Mario Cristobal in the offseason. This dude has transformed their defense. And I'm telling you, they came in and played with their hair on fire in this game. And what his philosophy is, which I am 100% behind for a defensive coordinator, be simple and let your guys play fast, right? And that's what he does. You know, during the game, they said that, they quoted him as saying that he termed his defense simple complexity. And he went on to say that it's easy for us to digest, but it's hard for the offense. That's perfect. That's beautiful. But Miami's defense, man, those guys were getting after it for 4 quarters in this game. Okay, now let's take a deep dive into the first drive by the Miami Hurricanes to start the second half. This is after Carson Beck threw for 31 yards in the first half, and Miami had 4 first downs, and they stunk on offense, and Beck was a non-entity. Okay, third quarter, it's 1st and 10. Miami's in trips left, and A&M's in a 4-2 and some form of cover 0 bracket. So I think they're bracketing the number 2 receiver with that slot defender and the safety to that side. And then they're playing like a banjo in and out bracket type coverage on the number 3 receiver with that slot defender and the opposite safety. Okay. Everybody else is locked up in man to man. Now, the Canes are running a shallow cross to number 3. They're running a dig route to number 2. They're running a hitch route to the number one receiver. Now, on the right side, the single receiver is running a 6-step out route. Now, this isn't a quick game throw, but it's pretty dang close to it. And then they take the running back to that side, and he's running a check swing. Now, guys, this is just my opinion. I'm going to throw this in here. If you're going to throw that out route and you're throwing that because you're getting loose coverage by the corner, just run a hitch. And the reason for that is a lot easier throw for a quarterback to throw a hitch route than it is to throw an out route. Okay. That's just my opinion. Okay. With Carson Beck, I said earlier, he's got some muscle memory issues that I think hurt him somewhat. One thing that he does on occasion when he's throwing the ball to his right side, is on the snap of the ball, he looks straight downfield with his eyes and then swings his eyes and head and refocuses and finds the receiver that he was going to throw to the entire way, even before the ball was snapped. And he does the same thing here. Now, there is no reason for him, if he's throwing that out route to the right, there is no reason for him to be staring straight downfield as he takes that snap. I think that that's just a bad habit that he's got going on. He did it earlier in the season. I was doing a game and they were down in the red zone. He was throwing a route to the right and he got the ball out of his hand late because he was dinking around with his eyes, looking downfield for some reason. I don't know why. But again, that's something that needed to be coached out of Beck. Okay, regardless of that, he gets his feet right on this and he dimes this out route. Okay, and again, you're playing to Carson Beck's strengths here because you're running a route that he can probably throw in his sleep. His feet are clean and the ball is getting out of his hands, so he doesn't have to mess with pass rush. Okay, and then Shannon Dawson, speaking my language on the next play, he gets up and they go tempo, fast, and they throw the dreaded hitch route to the left. So Beck just GSTs, grab, stab, and throw. Grab the snap, stab that back foot in the ground. That ball's out. Throwing that hitch route. Beautiful. Okay, here's what the hitch does for you. Besides being an easy completion, easy throw for the quarterback, and you're picking up yards, you now have the ball in the hands of your receiver out there in grass, space, and that cornerback is on an island now. It's those two guys, the receiver and the cornerback. DBs, cornerbacks, they're cover guys. They are not tackle guys. And this is Marion running the hitch, and he does exactly what you coach your receivers to do on the hitch. That is, when you catch the ball, you wheel it outside. You don't catch the ball and go back inside and run at all the bad guys that are coming out at you from inside out. You wheel it straight up field to the outside, and look what this cornerback does. He whiffs on the tackle. And now Marion's off and running, and this is a 21-yard gain. So Carson Beck, 31 yards throwing, struggled in the first half. They come out, first two plays, throws, boom, boom, little tempo mixed in there, and he's already got more passing yardage on two throws than he did the entire first half, and Miami is zipping the ball downfield. Okay, Coach Dawson, keep Beck in the groove, but he calls a slow developing misdirection play run. Well, he's not handing the ball off to Mark Fletcher, and he's not handing the ball off to Malachi Toney. He's giving the ball to Marion. Now, I don't get it. I don't get that. Third quarter, 1st and 10. Miami's in a compressed 3-receiver left formation with a single receiver right, and the running back's in the pistol, which means he's right behind Beck. A&M is in a 4-3 front, 4 down linemen with 3 backers in the box, and your guess is as good as mine as to what coverage they're playing here. I usually am not fooled by coverage looks, but I had a hard time figuring out what this one was. Okay, this play is doomed from Jump Street because the angles just don't look like they're there for the offensive lineman. Plus Lofton, the tight end, number 9, as he pulls, he runs right past an unblocked stand-up 6 technique to the side of the run. Runs right past him. Marion doesn't have enough wiggle or speed to make anything happen. It's slow developing. They're going laterally with the play, and it's a loss of 4 yards. Analyst Greg McElroy immediately says, I didn't like that play call by Shannon Dawson. Either did I. And now Dawson gets right back to the quick game. And unfortunately, I don't have this on film, but again, it was a thing of beauty. They run the slant route to the outside receiver to the left. Beck GSTs, grabs the snap, stands up, sticks that ball right on that slant guy. We've got a 10-yard gain on a 2nd and 14 call right on Coach Dawson. And again, he's playing to Beck's strengths, okay? And Beck's feeling good about things. Okay, the Canes have the Aggies on their heels right now. That first half, A&M kicked their ass. Now we come out in the third quarter and it's zip, 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 throwing the ball. And like I said, they got them on their heels, but you also have the Aggies now that are chasing receivers downfield to make tackles. That sort of has a different effect mentally on the defensive guys. And the Canes are about to gash them with Mark Fletcher. So it's third quarter. It's 3rd and 4. Miami's in a receiver right with a wing right and 2 receivers to the left. And again, Fletcher's in the pistol right behind Beck. A&M's lined up in an eagle one. They've got a ghost linebacker, which is a linebacker on the line of scrimmage standing up outside of the offensive tackle who's covered with a defensive lineman. That guy outside of him standing up, call him a ghost, and they're playing cover 1. Man free. Now, they've got angles for their offensive linemen on the blocks here. So the left offensive tackle blocks down and he pins that 4 or 5 technique on him. A 4 technique is inside shade. 5 technique is head up. That tackle pins him down inside. Okay, the wing comes from right to left and he kicks out that ghost, right? Beautiful. Angles they've got. Fletcher runs with his eyes. He hits that seam and he's off to the races for 23 yards. You come out, you throw the ball around a little bit. You get A&M into what is basically now a 5-man box, 4 down guys with 1 backer. You get your angles on your down blocks, your kickouts. You got that seam for Fletcher. Not any extra bodies in the box to have to jack around with. A lot of that's due to the fact that you came out and threw the ball around a little bit. Okay, and like I said earlier, this is the point where A&M calls timeout to basically stop the bleeding, stop the momentum by Miami, catch a breath a little bit. Now we get to the frustrating part that Shannon Dawson, the whole season, has had these moments in the games where it's like, wow. And we've got those coming up right here. And this is a play now where they get cute. This is one of those trick plays I was telling you about earlier. Instead of putting the ball in Beck's hand, who's feeling pretty good about himself right now, instead of putting the ball in Fletcher's hands, who's a hammer, right? And has been all season for your run game. No, they're going to go with this. Okay. It's third quarter, 1st and goal from the 10. They line up in a jumbo formation. That's a backfield look now where Beck's in the gun. Tony is right behind him in the pistol. And they've got 2 other backs back there, blocking backs that are on either side of Beck. I call that a jumbo formation, but they're going to get cute with that. They're going to motion Beck out wide to the right. And it turns into now a 2-back wildcat for Tony. They're going to snap the ball for him and they're going to run him downhill. So in my opinion, just run your offense. If you're going to run the ball, give it to your scholarship running back. If you're going to throw the ball, have your $4 million QB throw it and not your freshman receiver. That's just the way I look at things. So the Canes are pinning down with that left offensive tackle and guard, and they're pulling the right offensive guard, but the puller whiffs on the stand-up 6 technique, and that left guard who's pinning down and working up to pin that offside inside linebacker, he trips trying to get through all the, garbage and traffic in there. So you've got the stand-up 6 and that backside stack linebacker who are both unblocked, and they make the tackle on Tony. And then that sets the stage for probably the play that just about blew my mind watching it. I'm screaming at my laptop as they're getting ready to run this play and they get lined up. I'm screaming at my laptop, run the shallow cross to Tony. You're going to get man coverage. Run a crosser to Tony. Let him work across the field and let the guy chase him. It's third quarter. It's 3rd and goal from the 7-yard line. It's 0-0, right? 0-0. Miami lines up in trips left. It's a bunch trips versus a 4-1, and they're running a cover 0 bracket. So they're bracketing number 1 to the trip side there with the cornerback who's playing deeper and that pressed up slot defender over that guy. They're bracketing the single receiver to the right with the cornerback and the safety to his side. Everybody else is locked up in man-to-man. You run man routes here. You're running routes where you got guys that are bursting away and running. I sat there in amazement on the snap of the ball as I watched their number 2 and number 3 receiver run zone sit-down routes, covered like a glove. And Carson Beck is keying left. His outside receiver, who's either running a fade or running a backline in route, he's the guy getting doubled or bracketed. The 2 dudes that are running zone routes are both locked up one-on-one man coverage. They're covered. The doubled guy is covered, and that's who Beck is looking to, and he's screwed. He is screwed. Now, he starts to climb the pocket, and he senses that his right tackle starting to get beat around the horn, so he works up into the pocket, and he's going to start to bail to his right. Now, when he starts to lead to his right, look what Elijah Lofton does on the goal line. What is he doing? What is he doing? When your quarterback is starting to break pocket, you, wherever you're at, you start running in his direction, trying to find grass so you can stay in his line of sight. Lofton, it just stands there and puts his hands up like this. So Beck runs for about 4 or 5 yards and gets tackled, and Miami has to settle for a field goal to go up 3-0. This play right here just blew my mind. So you got the start of a really great drive to start this third quarter off. Zip, zip, zip down the field. They're in the red zone now. They get cute with the play, and then they call this play that I don't know. Unbelievable stuff. Okay, now we go to the game-winning drive for the Canes, and this is all Mark Fletcher. And this came down to 2 plays, okay, his long run, and then what I thought was just a brilliant call and play design by Shannon Dawson. So the play that set up the game winner was this. It's 4th quarter, it's 1st and 10, and it's a barn burner, folks. It's 3-3. Miami's in a bunch left, a trips bunch left with a pistol with the running back, so he's right behind Beck. Fletcher is. A&M's in a 4-2 front, and they stem from cover 2 to cover 3 when Miami motions, okay? And Miami motions to basically a 2-by-2 formation. Now, the way that Texas A&M executed this blitz absolutely killed them on this play. So I'm going to show you the end zone shot of this after I show you the wide shot. What happened here, Miami's right guard has a 1 technique on him, inside shade, with a stacked linebacker right behind him. On the snap, that 1 technique crosses the guard's face and goes B-gap between the guard and tackle. This inside linebacker is blitzing, but he does not come play side A-gap. He goes opposite A-gap, meaning he's going to the left of the center. So what you had here, when Fletcher got the handoff, you had nobody from the left of Miami center across Miami center to the whole gap between Miami center and right guard to the outside of Miami's right guard. There was no A&M defensive guy there. And Fletcher hit that seam, and it's off to the races. Right? Now, earlier I said DBs are cover guys, not tackle guys. One of the things that's always cracked me up watching DBs try to tackle is these dudes are always thinking they can tackle guys by their shoulder pads when they should be down tackling legs. Watch what happens when this guy tries to tackle Fletcher around the shoulders. Fletcher runs for 25 yards with this guy going along for the Disneyland e-ticket ride. Okay, and at the end of the day, then Fletcher, that was a huge gash run, and it sets us up for the game-winning play. There are situations in every game where you call a play as an offensive coordinator, and you know based on how the defense is lined up that it's going to be a huge play. Or you know if you've got any type of motion, how defensively they start to react to that motion. Before the ball snap, you know in your mind, this is going to be a big play. And this was that situation for Shannon Dawson. He had to have known as soon as Tony started to go in motion and the defender over him started to run with him, he was probably thinking in his mind, maybe even saying on his headset to Mario, this is a walk-in touchdown. Let me explain. Okay. Fourth quarter, it's 3rd and 5 from the 11-yard line. There is a minute 50 to go in the game. And again, it's 3-3. Miami's in 2 receivers to the right. So they've got Daniels in the slot and Tony is the outside receiver to that side. Elijah Lofton, the tight end, is in a wing to that right side. And then they've got the single receiver to the left. A&M is in an eagle 2 with a ghost and they're in cover 0. Now, Tony's going to motion across the formation from right to left, and his man runs with him. As soon as Tony starts to leave and his guy leaves with him, the play was over because Daniels now has a clear lane, unobstructed, to come downhill and pin that defender that's lined up over Lofton. That's a key block. There were 2 key blocks on this play. That's the first one, and it was set in motion and perfect as soon as that guy started to run with Tony's motion. Tony gets outside the left tackle. That defender's running with him, and he overruns it by a step or 2. Exactly what you scheme for. Tony breaks down, comes back the other way. They snap the ball, hand it to him on a jet sweep going to the right. And here's the second key block on this play. It's by the play side tackle, the right tackle, who reaches on that 6 technique and just gets a piece of him to slow him down enough for Tony with his speed to get outside of that, and he's off. Okay, and then they lead on the cornerback with 2 dudes, Lofton and Fletcher, come around the horn, looking at that cornerback, and it is over. It's a walk-in for Tony. Shannon Dawson, knowing what he was going to get coverage-wise and probably front-wise, scatter report stuff, he schemed and out-formationed A&M and head coach defensive coordinator Mike Elko on this play. This was a great job by him and a great call. Now, of course, I could spend another 10 minutes in this show talking about the last A&M offensive drive where McElroy was saying pretty brilliantly, don't overrush number 10, which I thought they did on occasion in this game. I could talk about the Aggies offensive coordinator running the spacing concepts for easy completions. I could talk about the brutal decision by the Canes defensive lineman to not pull up on Reed and hit him late for a 15-yard personal foul. And I could talk about the fact that I thought the Canes needed a timeout on that drive just to settle themselves down. They looked out of sorts. And then finally, I could talk about the poor decision. The ball getting out late, poor anticipation, poor decision by Reed trying to stick it in the end zone there, and the ball was picked to end it. Okay, now the Canes advance to round 2. They've got to wait 11 days. They're coming back to Texas. Hell, they might not even leave Texas. They may stay there and practice. I don't know what they're going to do, but they come back to Texas in the Cotton Bowl where they face off against Ohio State. And this is going to be a tall order for Miami's offense because the Buckeyes defense is nasty. Across the board, they're nasty. Okay, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Did I get it right or did I get it wrong? Here's wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. Have a great holiday, guys. This is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.